What happens when a beloved music legend walks onto a daytime talk show expecting a warm welcome, only to be blindsided by one host's jaw-dropping accusations and disrespectful interrogation? In just 42 seconds, Denise Welch's shocking comments would transform a simple interview into the most explosive walk-off in loose women history. The studio lights were bright that afternoon as Cliff Richard settled into the purple sofa, his trademark smile beaming across the set. Then he had come to talk about his latest music, his charity work, and maybe share a few laughs with the panel. The audience applauded warmly as he waved, clearly delighted to see the legendary performer in person. Sitting across from him were the four panelists. Denise Welch sat front and center, her expression already carrying a certain edge that the cameras picked up immediately. Beside her were Kay Adams, Nadia Sawalha, and Jane Moore, all smiling and ready to begin what should have been a pleasant chat. Kay Adams started things off cheerfully. "Cliff, it is so wonderful to have you here today. You look absolutely fantastic, I have to say." Cliff laughed, genuinely pleased. "Well, thank you very much. It's lovely to be here with you all." Nadia leaned forward, beaming. "We were just saying backstage how excited we were. You've given us so much incredible music over the years." "That's very kind of you," Cliff responded, his voice warm and gracious. "I've been very lucky to do what I love for so long." There was a brief moment of comfortable chatter, the kind that usually fills daytime television. Jane asked about his recent concerts, and Cliff shared a funny story about forgetting his lyrics during a show in Manchester. The audience laughed along, enjoying his self-deprecating humor. Then Denise Welch shifted in her seat, her expression hardening. The atmosphere changed instantly. "Cliff," she began, her tone sharp and accusatory, "I think we need to address the elephant in the room here." The other panelists glanced at her, clearly unsure where this was heading. Cliff's smile faltered slightly, but he remained polite. "I'm sorry, what do you mean?" Denise didn't hesitate. "Well, I find it quite interesting that you come on our show, all smiles and charm, when there are serious questions about your past that you've never properly answered." The studio fell silent. The audience shifted uncomfortably. Kay looked alarmed, opening her mouth as if to interject, but Denise continued before she could speak. "I mean, don't you think the public deserves some honesty from you? Some real accountability?" Cliff's face registered confusion and hurt. "Denise, I'm not quite sure what you're getting at. I came here today to talk about my music and the wonderful Pora." "Oh, come on," Denise interrupted, her voice dripping with condescension. "You know exactly what I'm talking about. You can't just waltz onto television and expect everyone to forget." Nadia jumped in quickly, clearly trying to defuse the situation. "Denise, I think maybe we should stick to the planned topics. Cliff is here to discuss his new—" "No, Nadia," Denise snapped, not even looking at her colleague. "Someone needs to ask the difficult questions. That's what journalism is about. That's what this show should be about." Jane Moore looked visibly uncomfortable, shifting in her seat. "Denise, I'm not sure this is the appropriate—" But Denise was determined to continue. "I'm just saying what needs to be said. What everyone's thinking, but too polite to ask." Cliff straightened in his seat, his legendary composure beginning to crack. "With all due respect, Denise, I was completely exonerated. The police investigated thoroughly, extensively, for 2 years, and found absolutely nothing. Not a shred of evidence. I was innocent." "Were you, though?" Denise shot back, leaning forward aggressively. "Or did you just have expensive lawyers who knew how to work the system?" The audience gasped audibly. Several people covered their mouths in shock. Jane Moore looked absolutely horrified, her eyes wide with disbelief. Denise, "Si, that's completely out of line," Jane said, her voice sharp. "That's not a question. That's an accusation." Kay Adams tried to take control, her voice firm but strained. "I think we need to move on to something more constructive. Cliff, let's talk about your upcoming tour dates and—" But Denise was on a roll now, her voice getting louder, more aggressive. I'm just saying what everyone watching at home is thinking. Why should we sit here and pretend like nothing happened? Why should we give him a platform to promote his work when there are these unresolved questions hanging over his head? Unresolved? Cliff's voice rose, genuine anger breaking through his usual calm demeanor. There's nothing unresolved. The case was closed. I was never charged with anything, not one single thing. According to the police, Denise said dismissively. Yes, according to the police, Cliff replied, his frustration evident. According to the legal system. According to the facts. According to the evidence. Or rather, the complete lack of any evidence whatsoever. Nadia leaned forward, her face flushed with anger. Denise, what you're doing right now is incredibly unfair. Cliff came here as our guest, and you're ambushing him with accusations that have been thoroughly investigated and dismissed. I'm not ambushing anyone, Denise protested, though her aggressive tone suggested otherwise. I'm asking legitimate questions that the public has a right to hear answered. The public already has their answers, Jane interjected. The investigation was thorough. The results were clear. Cliff was innocent. What more do you want? Cliff's hands were shaking now, his face pale. This is absolutely disgraceful. I have spent my entire career conducting myself with dignity and respect. I have never, and I mean never, done anything to deserve this kind of treatment. Oh, here we go, Denise said mockingly, rolling her eyes. Playing the victim card. I am a victim, Cliff said, his voice rising with emotion. I was falsely accused. My name was dragged through the mud. The BBC illegally broadcast a raid on my home. I won a court case about it. These are facts, Denise. Facts. Denise waved her hand dismissively. Well, that's your version of events, isn't it? Nadia interjected forcefully now, clearly appalled. No, Denise. Those are the actual legal facts. The courts ruled in his favor. He was never charged with anything. Thank you, Nadia, Cliff said quietly, his voice thick with emotion. But Denise wasn't backing down. I just think it's very convenient how celebrities always seem to get away with things. The system protects people like you. People like me? Cliff repeated, his anger finally breaking through. What exactly do you mean by that? Denise shrugged, a cruel smile playing on her lips. Or rich, famous, connected. You know exactly what I mean. Jane Moore slammed her hand on the table, making everyone jump. Denise, stop it right now. This is beyond inappropriate. Cliff is our guest, and he deserves to be treated with basic respect. I'm just asking questions, Denise said defensively, though her smirk suggested she was enjoying the chaos. Kay Adams looked directly at Cliff, her face full of sympathy. Cliff, I am so sorry about this. This is not how we conduct interviews on this show. Speak for yourself, Denise muttered under her breath, but loud enough for the microphones to catch. Cliff took a deep breath, clearly trying to maintain his composure. I have dedicated my life to my music, to my fans, and to charity. I have raised millions of pounds for children's causes. I have tried to be a good person, a decent person. And after everything I went through, the invasion of my privacy, the public humiliation, mocked the years of legal battles, I thought perhaps I could finally move forward. His voice was trembling now, decades of hurt pouring out. Do you have any idea what it's like to have helicopters filming your home while the police search it? To have that broadcast live on television for millions to see? To be tried and convicted in the media before anyone even knows the facts? Denise opened her mouth to respond, but Cliff continued, his emotions raw and unfiltered now. I lost work. I lost opportunities. Friends didn't know what to say to me. Some people crossed the street to avoid me. All of this happened before I was ever charged with anything, before there was any evidence, before any facts were established. Just accusations. The audience was completely still, hanging on every word. Several people were visibly moved, wiping their eyes. And when the police investigation concluded, When they found nothing, when they confirmed my innocence, did the media give that the same coverage? Did they broadcast my exoneration with the same enthusiasm they showed when raiding my home? No, the damage was done. Jane Moore had tears in her eyes now. Cliff, you don't have to... Yes, I do, Cliff said gently but firmly. Because apparently, even now, even after being proven innocent, even after winning my court case against the BBC for their illegal coverage, there are still people like Denise who are determined to keep that cloud hanging over me. He looked directly at Denise. But apparently, even after being proven innocent, even after the court sided with me, even after the police apologized, there are still people like you, Denise, who are determined to destroy what's left of my reputation. Denise leaned back in her chair, arms crossed defensively. I'm just doing my job. Your job? Cliff's voice was incredulous now, his frustration boiling over. Your job is to ambush guests with false allegations? Your job is to make wild insinuations with no evidence whatsoever. That's not journalism, Denise. That's character assassination. That's bullying. That's cruelty disguised as inquiry. The audience began to murmur, many nodding in agreement with Cliff. The camera operators were zooming in, capturing every moment of the escalating confrontation. Nadia turned to Denise, her face flushed with anger. Do you realize what you've done here? Cliff came on this show in good faith. He's been nothing but gracious, and you've treated him abominably. Oh, please, Denise scoffed. Don't be so dramatic. Dramatic? Jane Moore's voice was sharp. You've just accused our guest, on live television, of crimes he was never charged with, let alone convicted of. That's not dramatic. That's defamatory. Denise rolled her eyes again. Everyone's so sensitive these days. Cliff stood up suddenly, removing his microphone with shaking hands. I don't have to sit here and listen to this. Kay stood as well, reaching out to him. Cliff, please. I am so sorry. This is not representative of how we feel or how this show operates. I appreciate that, Kay, Cliff said, his voice calmer now, but filled with sadness. But I cannot stay in an environment where I'm being treated like a criminal when I've done nothing wrong. Denise finally seemed to realize the situation was spiraling out of control. Oh, don't be so dramatic. Sit down. We can talk about your album now. Cliff looked at her with an expression of pure disbelief. You think I'm going to sit here and promote my work after you've just spent the last several minutes attacking my character? You must think I have no self-respect whatsoever. Well, you're here, aren't you? Denise said snidely. That comment seemed to be the final straw. Cliff's face hardened. I was here. Past tense. I'm leaving. Jane stood up and walked over to him. Cliff, I am deeply sorry. You have been treated appallingly, and you have every right to leave. I would do the same in your position. Nadia nodded vigorously. Absolutely. And this whole thing has been disgraceful. Cliff gave them both a small, sad smile. Thank you. Thank you both for your kindness. And Kay, thank you as well. You tried to steer things in a better direction. Kay had tears in her eyes. I'm so sorry this happened. As Cliff began to walk off the set, Denise called after him. Really? You're actually leaving? How very professional of you. Cliff stopped and turned back to face her. The entire studio held its breath. Professional? He said quietly, his voice cutting through the silence like a knife. You want to talk about professionalism? I have been in this industry for over 60 years. I have conducted thousands of interviews. I have been on every major talk show, in every major country. Never, and I mean never, have I been treated with such contempt and disrespect as I have been today by you. Denise opened her mouth to respond, but Cliff held up his hand. I'm not finished, he said firmly. You have used your position on this show to publicly humiliate me, to dredge up a painful chapter of my life that was resolved legally and factually years ago. You have ignored the truth, ignored the facts, and ignored basic human decency. And for what? For ratings? For attention? To make yourself feel important? The audience was completely silent now, riveted by his words. Denise tried to interject. That's not... Yes, it is, Cliff said, his voice steady and controlled despite the emotion behind it. That's exactly what this was. You didn't ask me tough questions. You made accusations. You insinuated guilt where none exists. You dismissed the findings of a thorough police investigation and a court ruling because they didn't align with whatever agenda you decided to pursue today. I have every right to... Denise started again. Rights? Cliff's voice rose slightly. Let me tell you about rights. I had a right to privacy, which was violated when the BBC broadcast a raid on my home. I had a right to be presumed innocent, which was trampled by media outlets who convicted me in the court of public opinion before a single fact was established. I had a right to defend myself, which I did successfully in court. And I had a right to come onto this show today and be treated with basic human decency, which you have utterly failed to provide. Jane Moore stood up, her face flushed with emotion. Denise, do you have any idea what this man has been through? Any idea at all? Denise shifted uncomfortably. Well, No, you clearly don't, Jane continued, her voice passionate. Because if you did, if you had 1 ounce of empathy or understanding, you would never have treated him the way you just did. Nadia joined in, her voice equally forceful. Cliff has spent years rebuilding his life after those false accusations. Years. And in the space of a few minutes, you've tried to tear all of that down again. I feel sorry for you, Denise, Cliff continued, his voice softening slightly. I truly do, because at the end of the day, I know who I am. I know what I've done and what I haven't done. I can sleep at night with a clear conscience. Can you? Denise's face had gone red, her earlier confidence evaporating. You can't speak to me like that. I just did, Cliff replied calmly. And unlike you, everything I've said is true and can be backed up with facts and court records. Every single word I've spoken today can be verified. Can you say the same? A young woman in the audience stood up. Cliff, we believe you. We support you. Please don't let her make you think otherwise. Other audience members voiced their agreement, a chorus of support that filled the studio. Thank you, Cliff said, his voice thick with emotion. Thank you all. Your support means the world to me. He turned back to Denise. Do you see this? Do you see these people? They understand something that you apparently don't. They understand that compassion and truth matter. That you can't just say whatever you want about someone without consequences. That words have power. And with that power comes responsibility. Denise sat frozen, clearly not expecting to be confronted so directly and eloquently. I've spent my entire career, Cliff went on, trying to bring joy to people through music. I've tried to use my platform for good, to raise money for charity, to support causes that matter. And yes, I went through a nightmare that I wouldn't wish on my worst enemy. But I survived it. I came out the other side, and I thought, finally, I could move forward. His voice cracked slightly. But you couldn't let that happen, could you? You had to bring it all back up, to throw it in my face, to make me relive the worst period of my life in front of millions of people. Kay stood up and walked over to Cliff. You don't have to explain yourself to anyone. You've done nothing wrong. Thank you, Kay, Cliff said gratefully. I appreciate your support more than you know. He turned to the audience. Thank you all for your support over the years. I'm sorry you had to witness this today. The audience erupted into applause, many standing to show their support for him. Some were even shouting words of encouragement. Cliff looked back at the panel one last time. Jane, Nadia, Kay, thank you for your integrity. I hope we can meet again under better circumstances. Then he looked at Denise. As for you, I hope you think long and hard about the kind of person you want to be, and the kind of journalist you claim to be. Because what you did today was neither fair, nor balanced, nor ethical. Denise sat frozen in her chair, her face a mixture of anger and embarrassment. She clearly hadn't expected this response. As Cliff walked toward the exit, Nadia suddenly stood up. You know what? I'm not sitting here either. She removed her microphone and followed Cliff. Wait for me. I'll walk you out. Jane Moore stood as well. I think I'm done too. I can't be part of this anymore. Kay looked torn, but ultimately remained seated, though her expression showed she was deeply uncomfortable with what had transpired. Denise watched in disbelief as two of her co-hosts walked off the set. You're all being ridiculous, she called after them. This is completely unprofessional. You're abandoning the show. But nobody responded to her protests. The cameras captured Cliff walking through the studio doors, flanked by Nadia and Jane, both of whom were clearly offering him words of comfort and support. I can't believe she did that, Nadia said as they walked down the corridor. I've known Denise for years, and I've never seen her be so deliberately cruel. Jane shook her head. It was like watching someone self-destruct. She just kept going, kept pushing, even when it was obvious she was wrong. Cliff walked between them, still visibly shaken, but holding himself together with remarkable composure. Thank you both for standing up for me. You didn't have to do that. Yes, we did, Nadia said firmly. What she did was unforgivable. We couldn't just sit there and pretend it was okay. You're a good man, Cliff, Jane added. Everyone who knows you knows that. Don't let Denise's bitterness make you doubt yourself. They reached the backstage area where crew members were gathering, many looking upset and angry. A camera operator approached them. Mr. Richard, that was completely out of order. We're all horrified. Cliff managed a small smile. Thank you. That means a lot. Back on the set, Denise turned to Kay with an exasperated expression. Can you believe this? Kay looked at her coldly. Actually, Denise, I can. What I can't believe is what you just did to that man. Oh, not you too, Denise groaned. Yes, me too, Kay said firmly. Cliff Richard is a gentleman. He's a legend. He's been through hell and back, and he was proven innocent. What you did today was cruel. It was unprofessional. And it was wrong. Denise tried to laugh it off. Everyone's being so sensitive. No, Kay said, shaking her head. Everyone's being decent human beings. Something you clearly forgot how to be. The audience applauded Kay's words, and Denise looked around the studio, suddenly seeming to realize the gravity of what had happened. In the wings, crew members were consoling Cliff, offering him water and apologies. The producers were in a state of panic, knowing they had just witnessed one of the most controversial moments in the show's history. Nadia put her hand on Cliff's shoulder. I am so sorry that happened to you. Thank you for standing up for me, Cliff said, his voice still shaky. It meant more than you know. Jane nodded. That was completely unacceptable. Denise crossed every line imaginable. I just don't understand, Cliff said sadly. I came here to talk about music, about positivity. Why did she feel the need to attack me like that? Nadia shook her head. I honestly don't know. But please don't let her behavior reflect on all of us. Most of us have the utmost respect for you. I know that now, Cliff said, managing a small smile. Thank you both for proving that there are still people with integrity in this business. Back on the set, Kay was trying to bring the show to some kind of conclusion. Well, I think it's fair to say that didn't go as planned. Denise crossed her arms defensively. I was just trying to ask the tough questions. There's a difference between tough questions and a personal attack, Kay said sharply. And what you did was definitely the latter. The audience applauded again, clearly on Kay's side. Denise looked at the audience with disbelief. Really? You're all going to act like I'm the villain here? One audience member shouted out, "Yes, because you are." Others voiced their agreement. An older woman stood up. "I've been a Cliff fan for 50 years. I watched him suffer through those accusations. He was proven innocent. What you did today was cruel." Denise looked away, unable to meet her gaze. "You know what the worst part is?" Kay continued, her voice softer now, but no less forceful. "Cliff came here excited to share his music, to connect with his fans, to spread joy. That's what he does. That's what he's always done, and you turned it into a nightmare for him." "I didn't mean to," Denise started, but the words died in her throat. "Didn't mean to what? Hurt him? Humiliate him? Because that's exactly what you did. And the fact that you can't even see that is deeply troubling." The cameras were still rolling, capturing every moment of this extraordinary breakdown. The director in the control room was frantically trying to decide whether to cut to commercial, but the scene was so compelling that they kept recording. Meanwhile, in the backstage area, Cliff was being approached by the show's producers, who were apologizing profusely. "Mr. Richard, we are so incredibly sorry," one producer said. "This was completely inappropriate." Cliff held up his hand gently. "I appreciate that, but right now, I just want to leave." A makeup artist came over, tears streaming down her face. "I'm so sorry, Cliff. What she did was awful." "Thank you, dear," Cliff said softly. Another crew member approached. "You've always been one of the kindest people I've ever met. What happened out there was a disgrace." "Thank you. Truly," Cliff replied, his eyes welling up. The producer spoke again. "Is there anything we can do?" "Make sure this never happens to another guest," Cliff said quietly. "That's all I ask." Nadia and Jane stayed close by, offering support. "Will you be all right?" Jane asked, her voice full of genuine concern. Cliff nodded slowly. "I will be. I've survived worse than Denise Welch. But I won't lie. This has truly shaken me." "It would shake anyone," Nadia said sympathetically. "What she did was beyond the pale. You handled it with incredible grace and dignity." As Cliff's car pulled away from the studio, the fallout inside was just beginning to unfold. Kay had ended the show early, unable to continue. Denise sat alone on the sofa, her earlier bravado completely gone, Jay replaced by a look of someone beginning to truly realize the magnitude of their mistake. Denise finally stood up and walked toward the dressing rooms, but she could feel the eyes of everyone on her. The judgment was palpable. Jane and Nadia returned to the studio and immediately went to find Kay, who was sitting in her dressing room, looking exhausted and upset. "Are you okay?" Nadia asked. Kay shook her head. "I can't believe that just happened. Poor Cliff. Well, he must be devastated." "He was pretty shaken up," Jane confirmed, "but he was also incredibly gracious, even in the midst of all that." "That's because he's a class act," Kay said, "unlike some people." In her own dressing room, Denise was staring at her phone, watching social media explode with reactions to what had just happened. The overwhelming majority were condemning her actions and supporting Cliff. She tried to craft a response, typing and deleting several times, but nothing seemed adequate. The reality was beginning to sink in that she had made a catastrophic error in judgment. Back at his home, Cliff sat in his living room, still processing everything that had unfolded. The warmth and kindness of Nadia, Jane, and Kay had helped, but the sting of Denise's accusations remained fresh. He thought about all the years he had spent building his reputation, all the good he had tried to do throughout his career, all the music he had shared with the world. And in just a few very brief minutes, one person had tried to tear it all down again. But as he sat there, surrounded by the awards and mementos of a legendary career, he reminded himself of what he had said to Denise. He knew who he was. He knew the truth. And he knew that her words, however hurtful, didn't change the facts. He had walked away with his dignity intact, and sometimes that was the most important victory of all.